You know how sometimes things can look perfect from the outside, but on the inside, it's a completely different story? Well, that's exactly what we're looking at today. We're going to dive into this really personal, real life story of a husband who's trying to figure out, is he the problem? Or is there something much deeper going on in his marriage? So, on paper, things look great. I mean, let's just start with the money. Together, they're pulling in $160,000 a year. That's a really solid foundation for any young couple, right? And it's not just the cash, they've got the whole package. A house, a dog, literally everything you'd think points to a happy life, a bright future they're supposed to be building together. But here's the question. If everything is so ideal, why does it feel like a war? This is the point where that picture-perfect image just starts to crack, and we get to the real story. And that brings us to the heart of it all. It comes down to this really desperate question from one man, just trying to make sense of his marriage. I mean, just listen to this. He says, "I wish so bad I could just download my memories for you all and let you decide." You can just feel the helplessness in that, can't you? It's like he's saying words just aren't cutting it anymore to explain what he's going through. And here it is, the raw, unfiltered question he's wrestling with. Am I the asshole in my relationship? He's putting it all out there, and he really wants to know. So let's take a look at what he's talking about. And we'll start with his side of things, with his own faults. Okay, so to get a real picture here, we have to look at both sides. We're going to start with his self-admitted flaw. Something, he says, comes from what he calls a legacy of cruelty from when he was growing up. He gives us some background that's, well, it's pretty intense. He talks about growing up in a home with emotional abuse. He's gained 70 pounds in just 4 years, and he admits he really struggles with a temper. And to give you an idea of how severe this abuse was, he shares this, just wow. He says, "My mom and bro chased me with knives at different points in my life." I mean, that's not just a tough childhood. That's a history of real violence, and you can see how he feels that shaped him. So what does this temper of his actually look like? Well, he defines it himself, and it's not physical. It's all verbal. He says he has this terrible ability to be cruel with words, to, and this is his phrase, identify weakness, target it, and blast people to smithereens, verbally. Pretty powerful description. But, and this is a really important but in his story, he's not just making excuses. He says he's actively working on it. He's in therapy, he's practicing self-reflection, and he feels like he's actually making significant progress. He's trying to change. Okay, so that's his side. Now let's shift gears and look at her side of the conflict, at least from his perspective. He frames the problem with his wife not as these big, explosive moments, but as something quieter, like a constant weight of broken promises. What's her flaw, according to him? It's this consistent pattern of unreliability. It's not one big thing, it's a constant thing of her just not following through. And when he brings it up, what's her explanation? He says she blames it on her ADHD and basically says, it's just the way I am. And for him, that's not an explanation. It feels like a complete dismissal of how it's making him feel. He gives this one really specific story that kind of sums it all up for him. The birthday laundry story. So for his birthday, she promises to do his laundry. You know, a small, nice gesture. But then a whole week goes by and the laundry is just sitting there, untouched. So what happens? The next weekend, he just does it himself, in silence. You can almost feel the disappointment in that, right? So now, we have these two very different flaws on the table. His is explosive and verbal, but he says he's working on it. Hers is quiet, passive, and he feels like she's not addressing it at all. It's got him wondering, is this even a fair fight? And this right here is really the core of his problem. When you lay it out side by side, it's a tale of two flaws. His fault, verbal cruelty, he says is acknowledged, he's in therapy, and he's making progress. Her fault, unreliability, he feels is dismissed, with no ownership and no progress. You can see the imbalance he's feeling. And this all leads him to this conclusion. Her actions are just as painful, if not more painful than my words. He's basically arguing that this constant, quiet disappointment from her actions is just as damaging, maybe even more so, than his occasional verbal outbursts. But then, the story takes an interesting turn. He starts to get a little self-reflective, and he wonders if this is even about who's worse. You know, is he just counting points instead of actually trying to build something? He asks himself this really tough question. Is this just about counting points instead of strategizing to win? Is he so focused on winning these little battles that he's forgetting about winning the war, actually saving the marriage? And that leads him to a much deeper, more troubling thought. Maybe the laundry, maybe the temper, maybe those are just symptoms. And the real issue is apathy, a fundamental lack of caring on her part. Because this is where his real fear about their future kicks in. It's not about laundry anymore, is it? It's that she puts off planning. She won't talk about shared goals. She consistently doesn't follow through on the big stuff, the things you build a life on. And so it leaves us with this final, really tricky question that I think applies to a lot of us. In any relationship, what's the difference between keeping score and just holding someone accountable? It's a fine line to walk. And of course, without hearing her side of this whole story, can we ever really know the full picture?